Greetings. I'm Captain Kevin Smith, U.S. Navy retired, and I will be presenting for this video. I will be presenting session 2 of the critical decision making series. And the purpose of that is, well, manyfold. We have a number of initiatives going on at the current time, including a workshop that's scheduled to be held in Chicago in November. Now, this instructional video series deals with critical decision making. And the reason for that is that this is becoming increasingly important in not only business, but also in military operations. Like I said, this is session 2. And session 2 is going to emphasize what we call elite problem solvers. Critical decision making is, in fact, a human activity, and as such, we will be talking about the human side of it during this video, and why we need to think of it as a human activity, because it's particularly important. Humans have a unique ability to be innovative and creative, and so we want to bring that to the surface and to examine that in some detail. So we're going to talk about elite problem solvers. What is an elite problem solver? And how do we get it? And why do we need such people in our organizations? Now, elite problem solvers, we're going to be talking about things like how do we select them in the first place? How do we train them, which is particularly important? How do we equip them? And this is kind of new. This is a new idea, but it is important. How do we drill them in drill and practice so they are prepared? And then how do we deploy them to trouble spots in our organization or the organization of our customers or in military operations? How do we deploy them so that they can go in and, in fact, prove successful and achieve mission success? I guess the big question here is, what do we want to do about how to solve complex mission critical problems? And we do have a choice. So if we want to do that, to solve complex mission critical problems, then the next big question, and you can think of this big question as the 800-pound gorilla in the room, because it is. And the big question is, how? How do we do such a thing? How do we go about solving complex mission critical problems? We have two choices here right up front. We can assume that it's relatively easy, or we can assume that it's hard. And I would suggest that we all assume, that it is in fact hard to do. But that shouldn't deter us, but we need to recognize that it is not easy. And once we do that, then we can hopefully mobilize our resources and to do it in a professional and effective way. Now, the real rub here is that not only might it very well be hard, but it might very well be very hard. And the reason for that is some recent developments in the area of problem solving and complex decision making. And one of them is the realization that complex problems are also known as wicked problems. And a wicked problem is, as you would expect, it is extremely difficult to deal with, to understand, and to solve. And the reason for that, and we will cover this very, very briefly here, and you can look it up and you can do all kinds of research, and I would encourage you to do so. But the reason why complex or wicked problems are so daunting is because their formulation or their understanding is elusive. We don't quite know, we don't quite understand what's going on. We do know that there is a problem, but we don't know exactly what is the characteristics of the problem, why it is occurring, and not the least of which is how do we solve it in a timely and effective way. Okay, so we talked about the formulation. The stopping rules also are absent. We don't really know where it began, and we don't know when it will stop. Solutions are non-deterministic. This is a particularly important, very important aspect of complex or wicked problems. What that basically means is that we cannot use determinism. We cannot solve it by rules. It ain't gonna work. Rules will not help. In fact, they may make it worse. So the next item here is remediation attempts may in fact make the problem worse. Potential solutions are almost always unknown, and symptoms, this often could be a symptom of a larger problem. So we have this compounding situation developing. And last but not least, causation may very well appear different to other stakeholders. Complex mission critical problems. To deal with it, I think we can say that there is a right way and a wrong way to find solutions. Again, we have a choice. When we encounter a complex problem and we're engaged in problem-solving activities, our choice is to deal with it on an ad hoc basis or to deal with it in an organized and deliberate way. And so, if we are going to deal with it in some meaningful way, and we do encounter a mission critical event, which is another way of saying that we have encountered a complex mission critical problem, we can either deploy elite problem solvers to the trouble spot, or we can send whoever is available. I would suggest the former if we want to solve it and not get ourselves wrapped around the axle and to make things worse. Again, we have two more choices. We can assume on the left side of the screen, we can assume that all problems are literal and unique. We can assign whoever is available to see if they can solve the problem, and we can hope for the best. Or, on the right side of the screen, we can assume that complex problems are never a one-off event, but follow a pattern. We can also prepare to confront complexity and criticality utilizing proper tools. And last but not least, we can deploy elite problem solvers armed with advanced problem solving skills. Okay, then the next big question here is, who are elite problem solvers? Who are they? We can say that elite problem solvers are experts in critical decision making. They are also complexity masters, and they are critical responders. They are capable of responding, or another way of saying that is that they are the first responders to any mission critical event that has occurred within the organization, whether it's a enterprise or a military organization or any other government organization or any organization whatever. We can expect that problems will arise, and we need to be prepared for it, and we need to have a cadre of elite problem solvers to help us deal with these situations. Elite problem solvers. Okay, so if we are considering this aspect of our organization, or how our organization is going to survive and to achieve success in the long term, then how do we get these kinds of people, these kinds of thinkers, these world-class problem solvers? How do we get them? The first thing we have to consider, of course, is how are they selected, and then how are they trained? How should they be equipped? What kind of drill and practice is necessary to make sure that they are prepared for the most daunting problems? And finally, how should we deploy them? Okay, again, in summary, it's select. This is with respect to elite problem solvers. How do we select them? How do we train them? How do we equip them? How do we engage in drill and practice? And finally, how do we deploy them? All right, elite problem solvers, how do we select them? Now, remember that critical decision making is in fact a human activity, and all human attributes that are appropriate should be applied here. We are going to cover some things like models and algorithms down the road, and we're going to cover some things like organizing this and organizing our thinking in this area. But fundamentally, it's a human activity. And so things like innovation, creativity, they're all part of the solution process. So keep that in mind. Select, I would suggest the way we select elite problem solvers is they have a proven track record in some complex problem solving activity. Here you notice that I use a fair amount of visuals that come from the military. That's partly the reason for that is partly because you know, that's my background. I'm a retired veteran, and so I spent a lot of time in the military and learned a lot of the stuff that I am presenting as a military officer. So, but that's not the only place where we can find people or to select people from. And that is one place. It is an important place, but it's not the only place. There are other avenues and other pipelines that we can consider. But selecting people to be elite problem solvers is important. And then I mentioned innovation is really crucial here. We want to make sure that whoever we select is in fact predisposed to be innovative. I'm not exactly sure how we are going to determine that, but that is a good thing for us to at least consider. Are these people predisposed to think outside the box? That would be front and center if I was selecting elite problem solvers. How do we train elite problem solvers? All right, so they need to go through some kind of formal training program, and it may very well be that the organization that they are in is in fact responsible for training them. And so we need to assume the responsibility of making sure that they're trained properly. How do we do that? And we will be discussing that in the many videos to follow this one, but we'll touch on that very briefly. Training elite problem solvers. We want to deal with what I call the innovation triangle. We want to deal with things like ingenuity, creativity, and of course intention, and we want to bring out, or at least foster, this whole idea of innovation, because complex mission critical problems might very well need to have innovative solutions. Training elite problem solvers. There are three broad areas that we should consider when we are setting up a training program for these people. The first one is thinking, the second one is theories, and the third one is things. So let's talk about thinking very briefly here. Thinking, we're going to be talking about things like critical thinking, that's very important, design thinking, systems thinking, and innovation thinking. So those kinds of things that we would cover under the area or the heading of thinking, important part of the curriculum. Theories, of course, are important too. The more we understand things from a theoretical standpoint, the better off we are in the area of complexity and uncertainty. So, general systems theory, of course, is front and center. That is extremely important, and other things like information theory and decision theory. And last but not least is complexity theory. We need to understand what those theoretical constructs are and how can they help us be better problem solvers. And there are ways to do that. And then finally, things. And the reason why things are added here is because we often deal with what is called big things or big mechanisms. We deal with things like complex things, complex systems, dynamic things, agile things. These are all part of what I would call large-scale dynamic systems. Large-scale dynamic systems are also known as complex adaptive systems. Some of these, many of these, are man-made. And we need to understand them from an operational standpoint. If we don't understand these large-scale entities from an operational standpoint, we will likely make serious errors in our efforts to solve complex problems. Equipment. Also, this is important and this is new. How do we equip elite problem solvers? What kind of equipment do they need to take with them during the course of their problem-solving initiative? What is their equipment? And that needs to be seriously considered. What is their equipment? And how do we select the proper outfitters? If we are in fact going to equip our elite problem solvers to go out and solve these difficult problems, either for our organization or, more importantly perhaps, for our customers' benefit as well as our benefit, then how do we outfit them? What kind of equipment do they need to make sure that they will be effective and achieve mission success. So, when we select our outfitters, make sure that they sign up to be our intellectual partners. They are our intellectual partners in this endeavor. And we need to think of them as part of this team that we send out. So part of the support system for the elite problem solvers is the intellectual partners that are identified and that have agreed to work with us in our efforts to solve these complex and very mission critical problems. One way we can equip these elite problem solvers when they go out to solve these problems is with Erica. Now, Erica is in fact part of the equipment. It's not the only part of the equipment, but it's an important part of the equipment. And you might ask yourself, okay, what is Erica? Well, Erica happens to be an important part of the equipment that we send out with the elite problem solvers. Erica is, in fact, a problem clarification and solution optimization algorithm. It's a large-scale algorithm. It's a top-level algorithm that is designed to optimize the solution by which we then solve these complex mission critical problems. So Erica is, in fact, you can think of Erica as a algorithm, and an algorithm is it can be structured, and we will get into Erica and its algorithm in future videos and also future efforts, because there may be just more than just this video series. But Erica is a particularly important aspect of this problem-solving initiative. Drill and practice, of course. Yes, absolutely. We should be doing that. Now, in aviation, we do that often. Right? It's kind of like our way we go about doing business. In aviation, we do a lot of drill and practice. In the military, we do a lot of drill and practice. There is no reason why we shouldn't have drill and practice within our enterprises and our civilian organizations and non-military government organizations. We ought to have that. We ought to be doing that. We ought to be doing that enthusiastically, with intent and with encouragement from all. Drill and practice is important, so we ought to be. In fact, one very effective area is to look at what has happened in the way of catastrophes and run them through some problem-solving algorithms that we have to see if we could come up with a better solution than what was applied in a situation that proved to be catastrophic. So, drill and practice is important. Drill and practice includes what we call scenario exercises. So creating scenarios, creating problem-solving scenarios, particularly important here. And they should be part and parcel of any organization that wants to succeed in the long term. So just keep that in mind. That will be also part of some future videos that we plan. Deploy, the last one. So we want to deploy. Now we can deploy these elite problem solvers either physically or virtually or metaphorically. Nevertheless, they need to go where the problem is, or to understand the problem, and they need to be able to be in a position that they can come up with a effective solution. So we need to deploy these resources. to these trouble spots that might occur. The trouble spot might be physical, might be metaphorical, doesn't matter. The trouble spots will occur in any organization, and we need to be able to deploy these forces. We deploy our elite problem solvers with performance models and with decision algorithms. That's particularly important. We are not going to go into this arena that involves critical, mission critical and complex decision making. We're not going to go into this arena unarmed. We're going to be armed with the necessary mechanisms by which we can create or formulate or develop a solution that is in fact viable. So we're looking to be able to do that, and we're looking to be able to do that on a continuous basis. All right? We do not believe that whatever problem we have encountered is the last problem that we will ever encounter in this organization that we belong in or in our personal lives. We know that other problems will arise, and they may be very daunting and very difficult, and so we need to be prepared for that eventuality. The motto of the elite problem solver is to clarify, reason, and win. That's the motto. In summary, we can say that complex problem-solving skills possessed by the elite problem solvers when they engage in critical decision-making is that they can move, they can check for emotional distortions, they can reframe, which is extremely important. They can ask what problem it is we are trying to solve and to be clear about it. They can check assumptions. They can imagine what a solution might very well look like. So imagination, or to what I call solution performance modeling. They should be able to, and elite problem solvers will be able to come up with a solution performance model before the solution is actually designed. We need to know what is the performance characteristics of the solution before we can actually design it. We look for leverage, we act on the leverage, and then reframe again, and then solve the problem. And so those are the quick and dirty steps that we would apply in any problem-solving initiative as elite problem solvers. Okay, that completes this session, which is session 2 of the Critical Decision Making Initiative. Thank you for watching.